Join us for lively discussion about the A-State community. Each week, we'll meet with a variety of faculty, staff, and students to discuss all things Arkansas State University. Live from the ASU-TV studios in the School of Media and Journalism, this is A-State Connections. Welcome to A-State Connections on KASU and ASU-TV. I'm Johnathan Reaves, News Director with KASU Public Radio and the host of A-State Connections, the radio show. KASU is the broadcasting service of Arkansas State University. For 65 years, KASU has been the longest-running educational, non-commercial radio station in the state of Arkansas. KASU is also the first NPR member station in the state. KASU has served in educating the public, entertaining the public with a variety of programs, shows, and sports over the years, and informing the public during times of weather emergencies and important news stories. Today, KASU serves as a 100,000-watt FM station that carries a lot of programming from NPR, as well as local and regional news, highly successful music programs, and KASU also serves as a place where differing views can be presented on many topics and issues that are taking place in our world. And I thought it would be appropriate for me to be able to bring on to talk about KASU Program Director Marty Scarbrough and Listener Engagement Specialist Rayna Kingston. Thank you both for being here and joining me here on A-State Connections.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Jonathan.
So I wanted to ask you all, everyone has a story about how they came to public media, public radio. My story was in the early 90s. My grandfather at the time, huge NPR listener, would come down to Arkansas. Saturday mornings, we were gathering around. It was required. Gather around the radio, listen to Car Talk, you know, and that with Click and Clack. And so we would have to do that. And of course, classical music was always a favorite thing. So that was kind of how I came, as well as being a student at Arkansas State, working at KASU. I wanted to get y'all's thoughts about how you came to public radio. And Marty, I'll start with you first.
Sure. I'll show my age just a little bit here. In the 1970s, NPR, National Public Radio, did a radio adaptation of the very first Star Wars film that came out in 1977. And I remember seeing an advertisement in the newspaper, and of course I saw Star Wars, and this is, the movie's coming back to town. No, I read the fine print and saw that the local NPR station in my hometown was going to be running this over the course of, I think it was about 13 weeks, where they kind of expanded on the story and kind of became a hallmark in the world of public broadcasting. And like for me and for others, it brought a lot of people to public radio, and that was in the 1970s. In the 80s, that very same radio station had a late night program of new wave and alternative rock music that found me tuning into that because, like so many public radio stations, they were playing what the other local stations were not.
Right.
I chose then to pursue a degree in broadcasting at Murray State University in the 1980s. Tried my hand at television. Sorry, guys, no offense, but found out TV wasn't quite for me. I had an opportunity to get a job at that same public radio station and started working there, worked all through college, got great experience doing a lot of different things there, from hosting classical music and jazz and bluegrass to actually I was also on the team that would go out and record every live musical event that the university had. So I learned a lot of hands-on experience there about going out and recording a jazz orchestra or a string quartet or a pianist or a solo guitarist. So it was a great experience for me then, and that's kind of what determined that, a career in public broadcasting was for me.
Very good. Rayna, how about you?
My story is probably not as fascinating as Marty's. My boyfriend actually introduced me to public radio, specifically KASU, 4 years ago when we started dating. It was always on the radio, and mostly it was at night, so it was mostly classical and the jazz programs that we have going.
Right.
And one day I was like, what are we listening to? Where do you pick this up at? And he said, it's KASU. And I said, what's that? And he was like, you go to school at A-State and you don't know what it is? And I was like, well, now you're making me feel bad. So enlighten me on what KASU is. And the rest is history. I've listened to KASU in my radio every day unless my son says he's tired of the news.
So so your son actually, when you're going to school, I imagine you're listening to KASU probably.
We do, and it also lets me know what traffic is like on the way to school for that
Right.
morning commute.
But I think that's interesting though, because there are a lot of people who do listen to KASU, Marty, that are just like that. They'll,
Sure.
and maybe sometimes like, oh, I'm listening to this public radio, whatever it is, but then they end up and they're older and now they're taking their kids and they're doing the same
Right.
thing.
Right.
I want to ask about the mission for KASU. Marty, how would you describe the mission?
Well, there's two parts to that. First of all, is the public service. That's I guess the primary mission of KASU. Like most public media services, whether they're TV or radio, we exist to provide something that other commercial broadcasters in this area are not doing. And so for the case of KASU, musically, that means we're playing styles of music that you don't hear on any other local radio station. Like Rayna said, we do classical music at night, jazz in the late night hours. We do blues music on Saturday nights, bluegrass music on Sunday afternoons, and then a lot of other specialty programs for world music and Celtic music. And then beyond that, we also are a source for NPR news and information programs like Morning Edition and All Things Considered. And then, of course, your own local and regional news that you oversee as a news director there. Again, all of this to provide a different sort of media experience for people in our region compared to what else they're receiving on other broadcast outlets. But then also, alongside that, we also serve as a means of providing some valuable experience to the students in the School of Media and Journalism here at A-State, and even students beyond that from other majors coming to take part in what KASU does here on the campus.
I want to talk about that real fast because, students are the students are running this show right now. They're doing a fantastic job and they're getting valuable experience in how to be able to do this under the direction of Galen Perkins, Dustin Sullivan, and others who do a fantastic job teaching. Tell us about how KASU works with students to be able to put something on their resume and further their careers.
Oh, absolutely. For KASU radio, people think, well, you're a DJ, that's all you can do, but there's a lot more to radio than just that. We have students who come in and work as audio editors. I'll conduct an interview. In fact, just earlier today, spoke with a musician who's coming from Nashville, Tennessee to present a concert here on campus. I conducted the interview. I'm going to hand that over to one of our student audio editors who'll go back and make any changes that need to be made, adjustments of audio levels, content, mixing in some music, and they'll prepare that for broadcast on the station. We have students that work for us doing nothing but organizing our music library. Like I said, all those different styles and genres of music. For years, we've had a student music librarian who keeps all of that in order so that we can find whatever we need whenever we need it. And then also we have students working for us in graphic design, which again, you think about when does radio need a graphic designer? Well, in the world of social media and websites, yes, we need graphics that are put together for specific programs, specific KASU events. And then, of course, we do still have students that from time to time serve as on-air announcers, doing things on the radio. So a lot of different ways in which students are involved, and as you said, Jonathan, getting some very real-world experience that they can put on a resume before they get out looking for that first job in broadcasting, kind of giving them a jump start on their career before they finish their degree.
Right. Rayna, I wanted to ask you about the different kind of programming that you enjoy on KASU. If you listen to it, what's some of the things that you really like about listening to KASU? I
love, like we've already said, this is a very unique set of information that we provide to the community, and I love that uniqueness. It's not something that I get on any other radio station. And so, from working in food service for 16 years before coming here, listening to other things that play the same music every hour gets to be very tedious throughout the day and kind of numbing to the point where you just want quiet when you leave and you don't want to turn the radio on in the car. I haven't had that with KASU, whether it's Marty's Arkansas Roots show or it's A-State Connections or Morning Edition. There is always something that I find I learn each day from our programming.
Right. And those kinds of experiences are what people have, and something that's called driveway moments when people are hearing things. Explain some of that, Marty.
Well, it's kind of become a public radio cliche
Right.
about, one of the things that public radio is known for is doing longer form news reports and interviews. The news that you get on most radio stations is usually just maybe about sometimes 30 seconds, 60 seconds at the most, just kind of the very bare bone news headlines. But on public radio stations like KASU, we can go in depth, having lengthy conversations with politicians seeking offices, with people in public service, with celebrities, from authors to musicians and actors. And so we can have these long form conversations with people like that. But also, one of the things public radio does is have conversations with people who are affected by the news. Hurricane strikes Florida. We talk with a person about how has that changed your life,
Right.
or how legislation that's come into place is affecting people. And those kind of long, by long I mean like 5, 6, 7, 10 minutes, sometimes half-hour long conversations. People get sucked into those. They're compelling, and people get to their destination, often going home to their driveway, and they find that, I'm staying in my car and continuing to listen to this even after I've arrived at my destination. I'm having a driveway moment.
Just give me 5 more minutes. I can't leave. I got to find out what's
exactly.
going on in that. One of the things that KASU does is not only by way of making impacts, what you hear on the air, but also going into the community, making some of those impacts. Rayna, I wanted to ask you about some of the ways that KASU goes out into the communities and makes those impacts.
Well, you can find us at the beginning of the school year. We go to the Gathering on the Green, and we go to the community fair that's hosted on campus. I went to Beatles at the Ridge in Walnut Ridge back in September. That was a really unique opportunity for me, considering my son is named after a Beatles song.
Hey, Jude.
Hey, Jude. And just to be able to connect with people that all come together for their love of the Beatles. How cool is that, to be able to go and connect with others over music? The music brings everybody together, but for me to get out and to actually talk to people that listen to us that aren't from Jonesboro, that I don't know personally, that listen to us, to be able to go interact with people out in the community, and all of the community we serve, not just Jonesboro, but the entire community that we reach and serve. That, I think, is the biggest reward in my job, is getting out there and getting them to know us a little bit better as well.
And Marty, I know you see this a lot, where people just come up to you. You don't get a chance to really talk with people face to face, obviously, when you're on the air, but those community engagements are awesome.
Well, it helps us to be able to serve the community even better. And with Rayna now on board, we're very fortunate to have her as someone who can specifically focus on telling the community about KASU. As you heard her say, she wasn't really aware of it until 4 years ago. We want to make sure the entire region is aware of what KASU has to offer, and Rayna's going to be a big part in making that happen.
Tell us, we got about a minute left here on this first segment, and Marty, we can actually extend this into the next break if we need to, but I want to ask you about some of the ways musically that we reach out into the communities.
Yeah, that's a long story. I guess trying to just, in a brief nutshell, just kind of to tease where this is going. KASU, over the years, for over 2 decades now, has partnered with individual communities around the region, trying to get people back to their downtown areas. And we've done that in some very unique ways, and we've used music to be able to do that.
Very good. So when we come back, we're going to talk about Bluegrass Monday and other ways to be able to do that. So we will do that here after this particular break. You're watching KASU's A-State Connections along with ASU-TV. We will take a break. When we come back, we'll have more coming up next.
ASU-TV, shows like Red Wolf Roundtable, ASU-TV News, Westside Football, and more. Gain real-life experience while doing what you love. Get involved with ASU-TV today.
Here to deliver the latest news on A-State sports, ranging from football, basketball, baseball, and more.
I'm your host, Tristan Harlan, alongside your other host, Cooper Melder.
Red Wolf Roundtable is your local sports source.
Tune in to Red Wolf Roundtable to get your fix on sports talk and news.
At Arkansas State, we want you to go. Go where learning soars, takes flight, and rockets ahead. Go for experiences, internships, and scholarships. We want you to go. Become A-State Maine. Are you ready to go? Go.astate.edu for details.
Live from the ASU-TV studios in the School of Media and Journalism, this is A-State Connections. And welcome back to A-State Connections on KASU and ASU-TV. I'm Johnathan Reaves, and we're talking about KASU Public Radio, the NPR member station on the campus at Arkansas State. KASU Program Director Marty Scarbrough joins me, as well as KASU Listener Engagement Specialist Rayna Kingston. Thank you both once again for joining me here for this edition. We talked before the break, Marty, about a little bit about live music events, and you were telling us about how it was a way to be able to bring people into the downtown areas to celebrate downtowns.
Sure. Well, about 25 years ago, KASU was approached by some people from downtown Jonesboro and said, look, what can you do to help us get people into the downtown areas? Because as is still the case in many communities, smaller towns across the country, you know, the downtown mom and pop businesses that existed there for many years have given way to larger chain stores in other parts of the town. So we thought, well, as a way we could kind of collaborate and promote what KASU was doing, we started having blues music concerts at one of the few restaurants at the time in downtown Jonesboro. And we were doing these concerts on Monday nights for a variety of reasons, one of which was a lot of clubs in Memphis on Beale Street were closed on Monday, so we had a supply of musicians who could come up to play for us on Monday nights. But also we weren't competing with other events like, college sports, high school sports. So not many other things going on Monday nights. So we started having these live musical events in downtown Jonesboro, and they were extremely successful. We were finding that having live music in a restaurant would get people downtown. And now, fast forward 25 years later, you can find live music in downtown Jonesboro virtually every night of the week in multiple locations. So we at KASU, I think we had maybe a little something to do with that. We started off with what was then the Blue Monday concert series, doing blues music one Monday night a month at a restaurant. Another restaurant owner in downtown Jonesboro, in fact, I think it might have been the only other downtown Jonesboro restaurant open at the time, saw all these people going into their competitor down the street on a Monday night and said, I got to go check this out and see why this is going on. So they came down there, saw all the people, saw KASU, saw we were having the live blues music, and they said, hey, can you do something like that in my restaurant on a different Monday night of the month? So that's how our Bluegrass Monday concert series got started. And now, 20 plus years later, that's continuing. It's grown beyond anything we ever imagined it would be. And in those years, not only have we taken this model to downtown Jonesboro, but we've had events in downtown Paragould, in Newport, in Pocahontas. We've had events in Dice in conjunction with the Johnny Cash Boyhood Home. And we're looking to always find ways to bring unique musical opportunities that people can have a chance to enjoy styles of music that they maybe don't get to hear often played live at very low cost or free events, which we receive funding from various corporations, organizations, businesses that help sponsor those to make those possible. So that's kind of how KASU is involved in the live music around our region.
And it's a fantastic resource and definitely a great way to be able to impact the communities in which we serve. Rayna, I wanted to ask you about your role at KASU. We're so happy you're part of the staff, Listener Engagement Specialist. Tell me about what you do.
I'm happy to be part of the staff, so thank you for that, Johnathan. My role as the Listener Engagement Specialist is pretty explanatory. I work with the listeners and engagement, but then people ask me, they're like, what does that mean? Well, I do a lot of our social media presence. I don't have the graphics design like some of our stuff that we have, but I do what I can to get our presence out there on social media. But I'm also there for the individual listeners to contact if they have something they want to talk about that they're hearing on the station, concerns, what their donations are going to. And I'm there as a liaison between the community and the station. So for me, that's a great opportunity because I love to talk to people.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we're all talkers in my family, so it's nice to be able to introduce people as well to what KASU is. And I think that's also part of my job, is to introduce new people to it and try to get them to become listener members like we already have.
Right. And that's one of the things that I know this, I'm sometimes guilty of this in the news department, thinking that I know what the listener wants to hear, because if it's important to me, but that's not necessarily true. And sometimes you have to go out into the community and be able to find out what it is. You don't wait for the community to come to you. They may never come. It's like you're going out into the community to be able to make those connections.
Yeah, and I love that I've gotten to go out into the community, and I look forward to more events that I'm wanting to attend in the upcoming months and going into the spring, to be able to engage with more people and tell them about KASU, about my experience with KASU and how I ended up here, because I think that gives those people that may be on the fence about what KASU is and what we do, it gives them something to relate to more than just hearing us on the air.
Sure.
They get to see me out in the community, and they get to meet me, and sometimes my kid might be with me, so you might get to meet him too, and you can see we're just normal like everybody else.
Yeah.
But I'm so honored to get to have this position to work with those listeners, because as a listener, before I got this role, I always wondered, what all does KASU do? Because I knew about the events and everything, the Bluegrass Monday and other concert events that they had a presence at, but I didn't really know personally what anybody did at the station.
Yeah.
So I think that that's probably my biggest joy in this role, is to get to let people know, like, hey, this is me, I work there, and this is what I do.
So this was something we actually asked you earlier, and we'll go and ask you again. Something that really surprised you when you started coming on KASU.
Oh, okay. So I talked about how much writing plays a role in radio. And for people that don't know me, may not know that I actually have a master's degree in English, and my goal was to actually work in education. And in a way, I do, because I'm educating people on what KASU offers to the community, but I also get to do something I love, and I get to write. I get to write scripts for people, and I get to write letters to people and social media posts, and you just don't realize how integral writing is in everything that we do, but how without one or the other, it all just kind of crumbles.
Right.
So,
well, and I think one of the things about it also, there's a ton of research that takes place. And when you're looking at research, Marty, your show, Arkansas Roots, I want to talk about that for a little bit, because it's been a wildly successful show. And a lot of it is because it's not just you there playing, okay, that was so-and-so, and here's the next one. It's the research that you do to be able to say, you know what? I didn't realize that about, I call you kind of the Casey Kasem, or Casey Kasem in a way. You know what I'm saying?
I can see that.
Because that's what
Yes.
his style was, by way of bringing something that listeners didn't know. So you are kind of the Casey Kasem of the station
Well,
here.
you're very kind. That's a far too generous comparison. But yeah, Arkansas Roots, we started that show in 2013 with an idea of trying to do something different than anything else that was on the radio. And so we wanted to do something that was Arkansas-centric, because there are so many noteworthy Arkansas musicians from the past and lots of great musical acts performing today. We wanted to give them a platform, because for many of those, particularly the current musicians, they weren't getting any radio airplay. And so we started this show, and my co-creator, Mike Doyle, said, do you think we can have enough music to do this 5 days a week for an hour, and we found out very quickly, yeah, there's so much music that's out there. And yes, I do more than just play a song, but I'll tell you some of the backstory about it. You know, what's this Arkansas, the connection of this musician to Arkansas. I'll tell you a little bit of their unique stories. And I got to say, too, I have a lot of help in doing that. We talked about earlier how we have some students that help. We have students that do some of that research for me in preparing those Arkansas Roots programs so that I can then actually go on the air and talk eloquently and accurately about Glenn Campbell's background or Johnny Cash's boyhood growing up in Dice, Arkansas. So thankful for being able to share that on KASU.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, once again, for every college student, research is critical.
Yes.
And being able to get those research skills, that's important. One of the things that public media does in order to be able to stay on the air, of course, is to raise funds. And we're going to talk about that a little bit. And so, Marty, I'll let you start here on this. Kind of tell us about why it's important for us to be able to go through fundraising drives in the fall and in the spring.
Well, public broadcasting is a little bit different. In fact, that we have a license that's owned by Arkansas State University, and that is a special license that actually does not permit the station to sell commercial advertising. That's how so many media outlets, whether you're radio or television or even streaming, that's how they make their money, is by giving you a product that people want to see. And oh, by the way, here's a commercial message that's a part of that. Public radio can't do that. We're not allowed to do that by the government. So to generate revenue, to just simply operate, we have to go through other means. And one of those is through asking listeners, people who tune in to KASU, either at 91.9 FM or on our online streams, to make tax-deductible contributions. We are a nonprofit service. We don't make any money. We're not in it to make a profit. We're in it to provide the community with something unique and special that no one else is doing. And so one of the ways we do that is the special way we raise money for our operational funds going directly to our listeners.
Rayna, why should people give to KASU?
So that we can continue to bring more unique and live local coverage to the community that we serve, because what we already bring to the community is so important, but continuing to raise funds and raising more funds would potentially allow us to offer even more unique programming to the community and to be able to get us out there a little bit more, and maybe, eventually, I don't know, host like a KASU gala or something for people to be like, oh, that sounds fancy, let's go.
Yeah,
Something,
exactly. And that's one of the things that is, it's so important for us to be able to do that. Because of what we would love to be able to do, we'd love to be able to do more, Marty. I know we've talked about that, more original programming, because let's just be honest, here in the last 60 seconds we have, you can go on a streaming service or you can go on anywhere and find NPR programming and all that, but the local original programming like Arkansas Roots, like A-State Connections, like all these others are only on KASU.
Yeah, and that's kind of the future, I think, of not just public radio, but radio in general. If radio wants to survive, it's got to find a way to connect to local communities, and that's what we at KASU are striving to do every single day.
All right, very good. Marty Scarbrough, thank you so much. Rayna Kingston, thank you as well. We really appreciate you. And thank you. That'll do it for this edition of A-State Connections. I want to thank my guest. Also, I want to thank Instructor of Creative Media Production, Galen Perkins, and his amazing students who are behind the scenes running the show. And also thanks to engineers Clayton Holderfield and also to Derek Herring as well for their help. And also thank you for watching. And don't forget that A-State Connections is heard every Saturday morning at 11 o'clock on 91.9 FM KASU and streaming on the KASU mobile app. I'll see you right here next Wednesday at 1:30 for another edition of A-State Connections. So long, everybody.